Hello, everybody, and welcome to the lesson today on writing an email in English. So, in this lesson, we always try and discuss about grammar and vocabulary, and very rarely do we have a lesson on how we can use that vocabulary and grammar in a business environment. Emails are a big part of everyone's job. If you're just emailing a colleague or your boss, or perhaps you're emailing another client or another company, emails are really important. A very brief word about our company. We are Cercle, and our aim is to help you become more comfortable speaking English in every environment, whether it's business or whether it is more personal. We want to try and help you out in as many ways as possible. So hello to those of you in the chat. It's nice that you've joined today, and hopefully we can learn something useful today. So I'd like to start off with a quick fact about emails. I want to encourage everyone to write in the chat here. So what I will do is I will ask a question, and then I will see what your opinion and your answers are. So let's start. My first fact is, how many emails are sent every second? So while you're writing your suggestions in the chat, I just want to quickly recap and say that today we're going to be talking about really important phrases and structural aspects to emails in English. These are really going to help you communicate more efficiently with your colleagues and your businesses and managers. Emails are really important because you don't want to send the wrong message across, and people in different cultures have many different ways of communicating. In English, it might be different to how you send an email in French. But hopefully, we're going to link all of our lessons together, from our conjugations, our conjunctions, our modals, and hopefully we're going to try and learn something useful today. So, how many emails are sent every second? I would like to add worldwide. So we're talking about everyone sending an email. So I agree with Elodie, it's a very big quantity. Perhaps some of you are receiving emails now regarding business. I can in fact tell you that the answer is 2.8 million emails are sent per second. So that's an amazing number. It's a massive amount of emails. Of course, it's one of the most common ways to communicate with other people and convey messages. It is very interesting. So just quickly, I have one more fact which I think shows the importance of this lesson of sending and writing emails. And that question is, how many times a day on average do people check their emails? So how many times a day on average do people check their emails? So this isn't going to be as high as 2.8 million times, but it depends on your job. It depends how many people you are communicating with. It depends how big your office is. Perhaps you work in the same office as your boss, so it's easier to communicate with them. So how many times a day do people check their emails? And when I refer to checking your emails, it means going to the page and having a look to see if anyone has wanted to contact you. So we have a variety of answers. A lot of the students here spend a lot of time on their emails. So hopefully you can take away something from this lesson. So 3 hours is a long, long time. The answer is 15 times a day. If you're checking your emails 15 times a day, that could equal to 3 hours. Okay, so those are some interesting facts to start the day about emails. And what I want to talk about to begin with are general points, for emailing people in English. I think it's mm, so important to really be polite when communicating with a colleague or another business. Of course, because you're talking about a specific topic, you need to be as clear, as precise, and as polite as possible if your email is going to have the credibility that you desire. So, in respect of this, sorry, we try and use modals primarily. We always try and say thank you and please. A modal is a word we use to describe a possibility. In emails, we do not want to sound authoritative. We do not want to send emails when you say, do this work, I want this now, have you finished yet? That's an incorrect way to send an email in English. Sometimes it's difficult with the vocabulary to know how to make a sentence polite. So, when I write down modals, I can give you some examples in the chat. It's could, can, would. You can write down will, but I think the most important ones are could and would. I will add may because you can also use that to ask a question in a polite manner. So, if I may give an example of how to use modals, if I am working with my colleague and I'm waiting for a report, it would not be polite if I sent him a message saying, hello, John, send me the report. Sam. This is not polite, and I've made this very obviously rude, so just highlight this example. So in this email, if I wanted to make this one sentence more polite and drastically improve it, we can use could and would. Now, we use would if we're asking a question primarily, and could. So for this sentence here, I would write could to ask about the possibility of John writing this report for me. So let me show you the drastic changes that you can incur by using one of these modals. My sentence here is send me the report. If I wanted to make this more polite, I could say, could you please send me the report? And I think this is a really important example because you can use this in any sentence structure. Let's talk about another example. Let's say I need to have a meeting with John in half an hour. It would be rude if I said, meet me in 30 minutes. I could make this a lot more polite by saying, could you meet me in 30 minutes? It's a really good technique if you're struggling to think of a polite way to word a sentence in English. So exactly, if you're talking about customer or talking about clients, it's a really good word to use. Okay, so now I'm going to start talking about some small phrases which we can use regularly in different emails. So we have some examples from students who have written in the chat. I think it's fantastic that you're practicing the use of modals, and I'd just like to read through some of them now as I think they're really good examples of the uses of modals. Elodie has written, could you send me the report? It's much more polite. Corinne has written, for a customer, we need to use could. Irina has written, could you kindly send me the report, please? A fantastic use of the word could. Thank you for your suggestions. So, if you'd like to make a simple request, sometimes the purpose of an email is to ask someone to do something for us. We do this by offering a simple request. Can you think of a way you could ask someone to do a small task for you? So, for example, let's say I want John to do something for me. What would be a polite way to ask John? So I can give you a suggestion. just to show you the kind of exercise and the answers I'm looking for. We spoke about could you. I could also say, would you mind? This is another really polite way to ask someone to do a favor for you. For example, let's look at my example above where I asked John to send me the report. I could equally say, could you send me the report, please? Or would you mind sending me the report when you have time? So these are two really good examples in starting your sentences to ensure that you're being polite, courteous to your recipient, to the person you're sending the email to. May I have your report, please? That's a fantastic example, Laura. Thank you very much for that. So using that modal, we can use them in different ways. Okay, so let's move on. Simple requests. We have three examples. Could you, would you mind, and may I? Next, we have big requests. So a request is when you have a task which needs to be completed and you need the help by someone else. You have a question, you need help. That's what a request is. So we've talked about a simple, easy request. And a big request is referring to something that could be more complicated and that could take a lot of time. Because of this, it's very important that the person you're asking, you ask them in the right manner. You be polite as you can. So I will give you an example of a way you can ask someone to do a big favor for you, and then I will see if you can give me any examples. So I was wondering if you could do the report for me. I was wondering if you could meet me in 30 minutes to discuss our next meeting. I was wondering if you could finish the report by tomorrow for me. It's a very polite way, and when we use the verb to wonder, it's not authoritative. It's expressing a possibility, so in the same respect, it's very polite. It's a really nice way for asking a favor. And as we've seen, a lot of the students here spend a lot of time writing emails. Perhaps you do need to ask for tasks and requests to be completed. This is a fantastic sentence to use. So what other sentence structures can we use to ask for something politely? I'll give you about 10 seconds to think about something, and if not, I can provide you with more sentence structures. So no problem at all. I'd be happy to give you some more examples. You can also say, do you think you might be able to? Again, a very polite way, not authoritative at all. You're definitely hinting towards a possibility. Do you think you could do this? It doesn't matter. Don't be forced. There's no authoritative kind of demeanor in this message. Again, a very nice way to ask for help. You can also say, I was hoping you could do the report, or I was hoping you could do this for me. Okay, something else we often do with emails is ask for permission, to ask for the possibility to do something. Maybe you want to take time off work. Maybe you have a new idea for the project and you want the permission in order to use your idea in the project. So another way we can use this is if we say, and using similar structures to before, I was hoping I could. So again, we've just changed the subject there of you to I. I think this goes for the other sentences too. So it really does depend on the subjects you use, but you can use these sentences with different subjects to describe permissions or requests that you want to ask other people. You can ask for a favor. Could you do me a favor? Would you mind if my idea was used in the project or the meeting? In addition to this, you could also say, do you think I might be able to? So those are some more examples. And now the next suggestions for sentences I'd like to talk about in emails are for suggestions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you an example of a very bad way to suggest something in a meeting or an email, and I would like you to correct it and write a way which would be much more polite. So this is the bad example. Well, I think we need to, this shows that you're thinking primarily of yourself, and I think it's a very bad way to make a suggestion in an email. Well, I think we don't normally use that kind of structure of sentence if you want to make a suggestion. In reference to the permission sentences before, Delphine has a really nice example. I would be happy if you could send me. So an excellent example, Delphine, and I think to make it even more polite, you could use would instead of will, but a really good example. Elodie has a fantastic response to this suggestion. So I think it might be better to. I think it would be better to do this. And then you could provide a reason. Because I think this would increase our revenue. Because I think this would make the process more efficient. A really good way to be polite. We can also talk about rather. If we use it with a modal, it could perhaps work. A really good suggestion. Perhaps we could do this rather than the other project we had planned. So we're using modals and the word rather there, a really nice example. The ones that I have written down, the sentences I have written down, is maybe we could. I thought it might be a good idea to. So I think the second sentence is a really good way to suggest another sentence. And we have a question from Delphine. Delphine has written, I don't understand, with I plus was and could. So if I look at the sentence where I've written I and was and could, I do apologize. I don't see that structure, Delphine, but if I can offer my assistance, we normally can just say I could. I can't think of an example where we say I was and could. You could say, I was thinking about doing this. I was wondering if you could do this. So there are two different structures. We can start off by being polite and saying, could I please start this project? So we've started with the modal. That's one sentence that we could write. And another example could be using I was and then the verb, for example, wondering or thinking. So an example for that could be, I was wondering if I could do this report. I was thinking we could have a meeting to discuss the prospects of this project we're working on. I hope that answers your question, Delphine. If it's still unclear, please do write in the chat. So Ellen has written another really good example for suggestions. Would it be okay for you if I see your report? An excellent question there, Ellen. Maybe we could eat together tomorrow. Yeah, using these kind of language is really good and polite. So let's move on. And I do apologize. It's a lot of vocabulary. It's a lot of sentences. But at the same time, I think emails are such an important part of everyone's job, communicating as well. Not only can you use these in emails, but in meetings too. If I have a look at the list that we've written, I would primarily use these structures to suggest new projects. It's not only important to be polite in emails, but also when you're talking about projects that could affect other people and other businesses. You want to show appreciation by showing consideration, by asking questions linked to words that highlight possibility. It shows that you are thinking as a team. You're asking for people's opinions for your idea, which I think is a really positive way to talk and discuss potential ideas. So let's move on. Perhaps before I talk about some more sentences, it might be nice to go over some examples. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write down some really bad examples of what you should not say in an email. And what I would like you to do is think of another way you could ask the same question, but in a positive way, using these modals and these different structures that we've talked about. So, for example, one question could be, there is a problem. It's not nice if I send an email, "Hi John, there is a problem with this. Sort it out for me." It's rude, you haven't shown much politeness, and it's very direct and authoritative. So, if I want John to really work as hard as he can, I think it's important to show respect. So, for this sentence here, I could write, I believe there is an issue in regards to. So this is more polite. I'm not blaming him. I'm not pointing out a problem directly. And I've used different vocabulary to try and explain that there is an issue and not a problem. I think problem has quite strong connotations. So here, if I write down another example, I was wondering, using the sentence structure we used before, I was wondering if there was a mistake on the report or whatever you're talking about in the email. So here are two sentences that I've made to make this point, there is a problem, much more polite. Okay? So I'll write down a sentence, and your aim is to try and write something polite, to change this sentence into a more polite version for your colleague or your business. So it's wrong to say I completely disagree with your proposal. What could be a more polite way to disagree with the proposal? Of course, you don't want to be too polite and just agree with everything they're saying. Perhaps there are issues with a proposal or a report, but how would you politely convey that in an email? How could you write this sentence more politely? So, my question again, if I reword it, is can you think of another sentence, another example where people are discussing a proposal in a negative way? They're talking about an issue with the proposal. So I'll give you a couple of seconds. And again, if you're finding this lesson difficult and you struggle to use the modals and this vocabulary, if you rewatch and you try and use the stems that we've talked about, there is a certain logic to it, and it becomes much easier to turn a negative sentence into a more positive sentence. So I'll just give you a couple more seconds to try and think of a sentence. Delphine has written here, I have another opinion. That's a really good way, Delphine. Again, it could come across as authoritative, saying I have. So you could say, um, we could discuss other options. I like your proposal, but I think it could also be nice if we discussed other options and other advances for our project. So again, I've used some structure from your sentences, but I've just added a modal in to make it more kind and to soften that sentence. But a really good example. Ania has written down here, I am afraid I don't completely agree with you. So again, a really good start, Ania. You've used your language to try and soften the sentence. I think in the sentence that I have used, I completely disagree with your proposal. We can agree or disagree with something. To say you completely disagree is perhaps a bit mean. If you disagree, that's fine. But saying you completely disagree means you hate the proposal. It's a terrible proposal. And perhaps you really don't like this person who you've sent the email to. So if we take out the word completely, it's absolutely okay to disagree with something, but we can do that respectfully. So if I just slightly change your sentence, Ania, you could write, I'm afraid I don't agree with your proposal, but I have some suggestions to help improve it. It's a lot more positive and it has really nice connotations, but thank you for your contribution. Irina has written, I'm afraid I don't agree with you. I would, again, similar to Ania's, I hope the last example helped. Laura has written here, maybe we could find an issue in this proposal. Yeah, so you've used some modals here, maybe and could. And another way or another tip I could give Laura is we've used the word issue and we could reword this to make it more polite. So you could say, maybe it could have been possible to improve it slightly, or perhaps there are some ways we can improve this part of the proposal. So I think we have some really good sentences and we've had some other, I've given you some examples and you're trying really hard, I can tell, and you're doing a fantastic job of using the language that we've spoken about before to help you answer these or soften these sentences and emails. So thank you for contributing and you're doing a fantastic job. So let's talk about another example. Sometimes we need to point out a mistake. It's not nice and it can be a difficult topic to talk about in an email. But a way we could point out a mistake politely is by saying, it looks like, or there appears to be a mistake in column B. It looks like there is an error in regards to our project size. Please, could you adjust this? So again, I've added the word please and the modal could. So I think if there's one big takeaway from this lesson is to always use these modals and use please and thank you to try and be as respectful to your colleagues and clients. So you can also write, it seems. Exactly. So Elodie has written here, but you will do better next time. So when you say you will do better next time, that could be authoritative too. You could say, but you can do better next time, or I believe you can do better next time would be an even nicer way to say that, but a really good suggestion, Elodie. So I just wanted to quickly talk about these sentences as I believe it's very difficult to point out a mistake respectfully. But these are really good sentence structures which you can use to do that. So let's go back to our examples of rude emails and I will ask you to make it more polite for me. Let's say that I need to manufacture 100 pens in 3 days. Sometimes it's difficult when you have deadlines. So it would be wrong in email to say, we can't do that in 3 days. This is very rude and it's very negative. You haven't explained why. Could you think of a sentence that would explain the possibility of not being able to finish a report or something that is very important? If you cannot meet a deadline, what would be a really nice, polite way to convey that message? So everyone has deadlines, and unfortunately, given the circumstances of our working environment, we're not always able to complete these. So it's important to communicate efficiently so that you can have sufficient help or that you can have the deadline extended. But If you're going to be offered an extension, it's important that you're polite, you're courteous. So how could we write this in a really polite way? So it's wrong to say we can't do that in 3 days. It's like my boss asking me, Sam, can you do the YouTube live today? I can't do that today. It's not professional, it's not very nice, and it doesn't show that I care. So perhaps there could be an issue with vocabulary and trying to express yourself. This lesson is really trying to help you structure your emails and structure the aims and goals of your emails more efficiently. So let's have a look at some suggestions. I think Anya has a fantastic example. I'm afraid I won't be able to do it. I'm afraid the deadline will not be possible. It's not a possibility that I meet the deadline. I'm afraid I won't be able to do it, I think is the best sentence of the two examples that I gave. But a really good structure. Saying I'm afraid is almost pointing the finger at yourself. So you're taking the responsibility for this negative action. I think it's a really good example, Anya. And at the moment, I can't see any other suggestions, so I can give you an answer and my advice. If I'm unable to meet a deadline, I would start with an apology and I would say, I sincerely apologize that I will not be able to meet the deadline in 3 days. I would like to discuss further options as to how we can make arrangements for a new deadline. So, if I try and make that shorter, I could say, I apologize. I won't be able to complete it in 3 days. I think also it's important if you have to send a negative email, for example, not meeting a deadline, it's important to give a reason to. And you can use all of the examples above to explain that reason. So, as I look at the time, I realize we're at the end of the lesson. I know today was very vocabulary heavy and there's a lot of sentences to recognize and remember. But please do rewatch the video if you ever need to construct an email and you're worried that you're sending the wrong message across. Hopefully, you can listen and you can read the chat and use these sentences to talk more efficiently with clients and colleagues. Thank you very much for your time and thank you very much again for all your contributions. It's been lovely to talk to you all today and I hope you have a fantastic day. I will see you all tomorrow at 3 p.m. Goodbye.